Then there's that if indeed we suffer with him, we may be glorified with him. And this is the glorified language here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to come up again next week. And this is just honor language. What's interesting, and I'll point this out next week, that for some reason when we get to verse 29 and 30, people will talk about foreknew, predestined, called, justified, glorified.
The unbreakable golden chain, right?
Sure, call it whatever you want, but it's interesting that even clever commentators bungle this, because it's like, who does God foreknow? He foreknows persons. Who does he predestine? He predestines persons. Who does he call? He calls persons. Who does he justify? Justify persons. Who does he glorify? Bodies? No, he glorifies persons. What? This idea, this passage talks about the redemption of our bodies, and sure, punt to 1 Corinthians 15. Yeah, there is a type of body that we receive, but that's not what's going on in this passage. I think this idea of glorification, that we may be glorified, highly honored and esteemed. This is honor language. This is not talking about you get a shell that's glorious to look at. I'm pretty close to one now.
Mm-hmm.
See what I did there? Theology Geek Fitness. You can look as good as me. Just kidding. Go subscribe anyway. Especially
not without some major plastic surgery, but okay.
Neck down, buddy. This is an old man face, but I've got the body of a Tom Welling. But this is about glorifying people, holding them up in high esteem and honor, just whatever superlative way you want to say that, because he's just now finished saying heirs of God and co-heirs with Christ. He's not talking about the shell you receive in the new heavens and new earth that, except for Nick Quint, the rest of us believe God puts your soul into. So this is more than this glorification language in Romans 8 is more than just about bodies. It's about status.
Right.
It's about being, yes, God doesn't share his glory with others. He gives you a glory of your own that he bestows. And it's for you. You know, it's not just your body, it's for you.
Yep.
So I think that gets lost there.
Yeah, no, I got caught up on that a lot whenever I was trying to understand that passage. I was so pounded in my mind that about the glorification is when we receive our new bodies, that whenever I was reading that, I'm like, I just don't know what to do with the glorification there. And then it was actually Pritchett who made that case where he's like, it's not bodies, he glorifies people. You know, this golden chain, if you want to call it that, is people. And then you read through Romans 8 again, and you see the full orb of glorification there, the familial language, the heirs, the adoption, and everything that comes with that you realize this isn't just purely a physical manifestation at the end of time, but it is about honor and adoption.
I want to post to study the social science backgrounds to the New Testament.
Well, yeah, even in, and that's some good stuff. And I got this from I think L Flowers, and even he mentions in his video, he's like, even Jonathan Pritchett agrees with me. So that was kind of funny. But same thing with what Derek was saying. Like, I got caught up with the glorification because of systematic theology. So I'm just so used to glorifying bodies. You know, 1 Corinthians 15, 1 Thessalonians 4, Philippians, wherever that is, you know, transform our vile bodies. You know, 2 Corinthians 5. If our KJV, earthen tabernacles or tents were to dissolve. So this whole glorification language in Romans 8, you know, to whom we justify, so on and so forth. But then, again, taking into account what Paul has been saying up until now, yes, there is a element of glorification of our bodies, or you know, however, or a redemption of our bodies, rather, right? Yep. Just the kind of word that he uses, the redemption of our bodies. But when he talks about glorification in the sense of familial, and honor and status, that just seems to flow much better. And a cross-reference that can, you know, Revelations, you know, he that overcomes, you know, I will give him a new name type of thing, right? And kind of what Paul is saying here, in some sense, is this: don't live according to the flesh, live according to the spirit, because that's, you know, the familial aspect comes in. If you live according to the spirit, we are children of God. And then it's talking about this familial adoption, heirs. You know, we are heirs of God, joint heirs with Christ. So glorification in the sense of honor and status, I think you mentioned earlier, which is actually you know, David E. Silver again, the different types of honor, right? acquired, ascribed, and so on and so forth, you receive glorification in the sense of status and going into that economic structure. So that just fits better than a
Right.
body thing. Yeah.
And it's the slavery comes back up again, this debtor obligation. These hardships have a goal, a telos to them. And you're going, if you suffer with Christ, though, you also will be glorified with Christ.
So with that glorification aspect, then, if we're talking about status and bestowing, I see Philippians 2 linked into this.
Yeah.
Right? Death of the cross. After his death on the cross, whereby God had highly exalted him, right? Giving him a name and so on and so forth. So what Paul, could be alluded to here is our participation or due to our union with Christ, since we are heirs, joint heirs and children, if we suffer with Christ. So again, Christ is always used as the, what's the phrase or word I'm trying to, the focal point, right? Christ suffered, because we can go back to the chapter 1 where Paul says, I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Christ because that is the power of God in salvation. Well, what does that word carry? Shame, right? And disgrace. Because, imagine preaching Christ, as Lord. And as soon as you remember Jesus Christ, what are they going to remember? This glorified rabbi or this dude that was strung upon a cross and stripped naked? So, so where Paul is preaching now, our glorification, Christ has been glorified. And if we suffer with him, we too will be glorified. So it's that, again, honor and bestowing and because of our heir and lineage.
Yeah, yes. And Braxton is also typing and commenting under this. As I said, I said, I didn't make that comment about this statement. That was the bald one. And then he says, as opposed to the balding one. I noticed that when I'm on this stream and I'm looking at myself, I notice the hairline is in full retreat and it's thinning out. And I will catch up with my soon enough. One of the things about this idea, it's coming. But I'm reminded, Junior, of Philippians 2, right, that after he had humbled himself, even unto death on a cross, the very next line is highly exalted, the exaltation. And then, so that is a pre-Pauline hymn that he uses there in Philippians 2. I don't know much about Paul. I know that much. But I hear an echo of that because we also are going to be glorified with him together, all of us believers with Christ as co-heirs and stuff. So if Christ's sufferings, if we suffer along with him, which guarantees the Christian life to have some suffering,
right?
I mean, we don't have to compete with Jesus or even the early church fathers, but there's going to be trials and hardships.
Right.